Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. At that point during the offseason, we got to put our stake in the ground heading into 2024, pick our national champion. The Georgia Bulldogs going to be my pick heading into 2024. Now, the Georgia fans who've been rocking with the fellas the last couple of weeks and months know that I've always thought this Georgia team was the best team in college football heading into 2024. Want to highlight some of the reasons that I am so high on this Georgia program. Want to dive into some of the early fall camp notes and kind of talk about why this Georgia program seems a little bit different heading into the 2024 season. And you got to start with just the raw talent that's on this Georgia program. And all college football fans know, or at least college football fans who follow this sport relatively closely, it starts with talent. If you just have a more talented team than the team that you are lining up across against, your chances of winning football games are pretty damn high. And you look at this Georgia program, I don't think there's another team in the country outside of Ohio State that has the amount of NFL talent on their team. And you look at Georgia, I counted 17 players on this Georgia roster that if they want to declare to the NFL draft after this season, they would be on a roster come week one of the NFL season in 2025. And those 17 players, that doesn't even include guys like CJ Allen or Damon Wilson, guys that are going to be playing in the NFL, but just aren't old enough to go play in yet. So when you start with just pure talent, Georgia has it in absolute spades. And then I want to focus on where that talent is, right? I think it starts at the quarterback position. I've been very vocal during this offseason. Carson Beck is the quarterback that I would be taking heading into 2024. If you were to ask me, you have to go win a national championship. You get to pick any quarterback from across the country. Carson Beck would be my selection. And so now you look at the talent. Where's the talent centralized? It's at some of the most important positions, including the quarterback, which is one of the conversations we haven't had with Georgia over the last couple of years. I mean, we've seen Georgia win national championships with not quarterback play that was elite in the college football landscape. So you're telling me the Georgia team that is the most talented team in college football now has the best quarterback in the country as well? That's just pushing you more towards this Georgia pick. I think secondly, you look at where this talent is distributed along this Georgia program. Yeah, make no mistake about it. It is all over the depth chart, but specifically along the line of scrimmage. And you look at historically the last couple college football national champions, the Georgia Bulldogs the last couple of years, obviously Michigan in 2023. What is the similarity between all of those programs? I mean, they had elite line of scrimmage play both on the offense and defensive side of the football. Why does that matter? You can control how the games are played. I mean, so many college football games kind of get determined in terms of, how are the games getting played? You go back to that Washington-Michigan game. That game was the pinnacle of, all right, what's this game going to look like? Is it going to be a slower game with Michigan running the football and kind of controlling the time of possession? Or was it going to be a shootout where Michael Penix was lighting up the scoreboard? Because Michigan had just the dominant line of scrimmage, they were able to play the game on their terms. And so you look at Georgia, obviously the offensive line, the defensive line, two of the stronger units of this program, they are going to be able to control how every single game is played in the 2024 season. And I think lastly, depth. And we're going to talk about that from what we're hearing about with fall camp. But you look at the depth specifically along the line of scrimmage for this Georgia program, there's not a team that's deeper in the country than Georgia. And that matters. And it's not always the flashy conversation. You're going to have a lot of the national media analysts kind of get up here and pick Georgia because of Carson Beck, because of Oscar Delp or Trevor Etienne or Michael Williams. All the reasons that I'm picking Georgia as well. You make no mistake about it. That being said, you look at the depth of this Georgia team, the guys that are in the 2 to 3 deep are all very good players. A lot of those players would probably be legitimate top-end starters for a lot of other programs across the country. You talk about playing 16, 17 football games in the 2024 season, you got to make sure you're deep. This Georgia team is deep. Now, getting into some of the fall camp notes that are kind of standing out to me, and before we do, I would like to hear from the Georgia fans kind of why you guys are believing in this Georgia program heading into 2024. Would love to hear the names that are sticking out to you during fall camp as well. I learned a ton from you guys. You guys know I love talking this program. Appreciate y'all rocking with it. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into just some of the things that I'm hearing from this Georgia fall camp that kind of get me fired up. Carson Beck, we kind of know what he is, known commodity, very much trust Carson Beck. I think I want to start with the pass catcher, specifically Colby Young. I think we know what we're getting with Dominic Levitt. I think we know what we're getting with some of the tight end positions, specifically guys like Oscar Delp. What I'm hearing from Colby Young is firing me up. You look at Georgia kind of trying to find that true X receiver, that dominant boundary wide receiver that can work vertically down the field. Georgia hasn't always had that type of wide receiver. You look at Colby Young, he could be that guy for this Georgia program in the 2024 season. Colby Young, going back to his days in Miami, is dripping with talent. And when he committed to Georgia, when he committed going into spring camp, we kind of said if this kid puts it together, he is one of the more talented wide receivers that we see in the country. It sounds like early in fall camp, he is certainly putting it together. I think the second conversation that I want to have is in this running back room, where it always seems like, and I think this is kind of a comment that you can make for this Georgia program in general. This is the healthiest Georgia's been in a fall camp since I can remember the last 5 years. I mean, every single year, it seems like we're talking about some sort of position group or group of players that are injured or out for the season. You kind of read the fall camp notes. There are some guys dealing with some minor injuries, but outside of Ra Thomas getting removed from the team, I mean, this team is kind of fully loaded heading into 2024, which matters. I mean, we've seen Georgia win national championships without some of their best football players as of right now, obviously knocking on wood. I mean, this Georgia team is extremely healthy heading into fall camp, and specifically in that running back room where last year it was a disaster from a health standpoint. You look at Trevor Etienne, he seems to be a guy. I mean, Trevor Etienne put up phenomenal numbers behind a Florida Gators offensive line that was very bad in 2023. What does it look like when Trevor Etienne gets to run behind one of the best, if not the best offensive line in the country in 2024? That's something we're excited about. Branson Robinson, Roderick Robinson, both healthy going into fall camp. You look at true freshman Nate Frazier, sounds like he's going to be a guy for this Georgia program. And they got 4 or 5 running backs that you think are going to contribute in the 2024 season, headlined by one of the best backs in the country in Trevor Etienne. And so you look at this Georgia running back room, it is the healthiest and deepest that we've seen it in quite a long time. And then you go to the offensive line. I think 2 things that are standing out to me. We kind of knew what the starting 5 would be for this Georgia program. 2 things that stand out to depth on the offensive line. They got 7 guys that I really think would be all SEC guys. Obviously the starting 5, but then Monroe Freeling. I mean, Kirby Smart is doing everything he can to get Monroe Freeling on the football field because he's good enough to play. And whether it's at the left tackle spot, right tackle spot, having that third offensive tackle that can play both sides of the line of scrimmage, both tackle spots, that's massive for Georgia. And then you look at the inside and you have a guy like Micah Morris, who I had been banging the table. One, I think there's a good chance that we see a lot of Micah Morris in 2024. More importantly, this is one of the best guards in the country. I wouldn't be surprised if Micah Morris is a top 15 interior offensive lineman in the country. And the craziest part is he might not even start for this Georgia offensive line. And so you look at not only the starting 5, but 6 and 7 being really good for this Georgia program. That's what has to excite you the most with this Georgia offensive line. Now, going to the defensive side of the football, I think there's largely kind of 3 storylines that I want to follow. And the first one is the emergence or the seeming emergence of guys like Damon Wilson and Jalen Walker. I was pretty vocal during this offseason that I didn't feel like Georgia had, that top-end Ferrari pass rusher. We kind of knew Mikael Williams. He's one of the better defensive linemen that we see in all of college football. A little bit more of a Mack truck kind of pass rusher. We were kind of looking for that pass rusher that you can bring on the football field in 3rd and 8 and say, hey, I need you to pin your ears back, athletically get after the tackle that's in front of you, go get the quarterback. Wasn't really sure Georgia had that on a consistent basis in the 2023 season. We saw the flashes from Jalen Walker, who I kind of say is, I think, the best pure pass rusher on this Georgia program. We saw the flashes from true freshman Damon Wilson, who I believe is up to 260 pounds heading into 2024. It sounds like both of those cats are starting to put it together. That's a massive storyline. And I don't think Damon Wilson or Jalen Walker are necessarily all down starters for this Georgia program because they're probably unknowns in terms of what they can do against the run. Although I'm kind of optimistic that Damon Wilson might be a lot better against the run going into his sophomore year. That being said, this Georgia defense is going to stop the run on first and second down. And to have guys like Damon Wilson and Jalen Walker emerge as elite pass rushers in the 2024 season, that's one of those things that I think Georgia missed in 2023 and they're going to have in 2024. And I think the last storyline you got to follow on the defensive side of the football, probably two storylines. One, Carson are going to be really hard to keep off the field. Now you look at the cornerback spot, Dalen Everett, Julian Humphrey, again, really good cornerbacks. It's really hard to see Ellis Robinson not working his way into the rotation at some point in 2024. One of the more talented young cornerbacks I've seen come out of the high school level. And then I think more importantly, Georgia is looking for a little depth in the safety room. If there is one position where you look at and say, maybe we have a little bit of question marks about the depth. Now, our concerns about Georgia's depth is about a five-star safety. Can he be that safety 3? Dan Jackson played some really good in fall camp. And I think Dan Jackson's a guy that's been within this program for a very long time, 5th or 6th year kind of guy. He's playing on the other side of Malachi Starks, so that just makes you feel good. Malachi Starks being the best safety in the country, and it ain't even close. And then you have a guy in Dan Jackson who, again, is he the flashiest player on the football field? No, but he is a damn good football player for Georgia. And then you have KJ Bolden, who sounds like he's putting it together to be a difference maker in that safety room. And then Jonell Aguero at the star position. Sounds like he's putting it together as well. And you look at that star spot, you look at what Tyke Smith meant to this Georgia defense. It's a really important position. It's a really difficult position. I mean, not enough people talk about that new emergence of that star position and all the responsibilities that you have, where you're dealing with different kind of pass catchers in coverage, whether it's those big jumbo wide receivers, tight ends that are split out wide, or those shorter, shiftier receivers in the slot. You got a lot of different kind of guys that you have to try to physically work against in coverage. And then on top of that, you have to be able to support the run game. And so it's a really tricky position. It's a very important position in this modern era of college football. We kind of said it when Jonell Aguero committed to Georgia. We said it all last year. Like, he's the future star of this Georgia team, and it sounds like he's putting it together. And so you kind of came in with a few different question marks, right? Who's going to emerge as that big boundary X wide receiver? It sounds like it's Colby Young. Who's going to emerge as that legitimate Ferrari pass rusher off the edge? Sounds like Damon Wilson and Jalen Walker. And then do we get KJ Bolden kind of filling in that depth role in the safety spot, and then Jonell Aguero at star? We're kind of getting answers to all of those questions during fall camp for Georgia. So I'm only, 5 practices in to this Georgia fall camp, and I'm kind of getting the answers I need to pick Georgia to win a national championship. It's a sneaky hard schedule. That being said, I don't know if it matters because I don't think Georgia's losing any of those football games. So give me Georgia to win the national championship. A couple more storylines that we'll continue to follow for this Georgia program as they roll through fall camp, but we'll cut it there. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.